Hello, welcome to another episode of Salt Air. With me today I have Dave Bucha, also known as Utah Dave. Dave has been with SaltStack since the very beginning and is a good friend. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit today about vulnerability management and why is it still a problem? I mean, what's going on with vulnerability management, Dave?
Part of the problem is it's not always explicitly defined. What does vulnerability management mean? Some people, it's just, run a Yum upgrade or install the latest Microsoft patches, KPs, that type of thing. And so kind of need to define, what we mean by vulnerability management.
Yeah, I mean, if we step back and look at vulnerability management right now, one of the biggest problems that we have from a cybersecurity perspective right now is that such a large amount of software that's deployed out there is out of date and has known vulnerabilities. And there's software that's been published that is used to exploit it, making a huge amount of the global infrastructure it's in a dangerous place. But updating this software can be complicated. I mean, what are some of the problems that people run into when they have to deal with this?
Well, people are worried about running production systems. So you might want to make sure you're not vulnerable to some disastrous SSL vulnerability, but the upgrade, take down your website, prohibit you from taking payments online. There's a number of things that could be also disastrous to the company if you're not careful. So there's different steps. You need to decide what is vulnerable, what steps can be taken to fix it, how to roll that out, how you need to test that beforehand. There's a number of things that need to come into play, and so it's not just a matter of upgrading one piece of software. There's a lot of pieces to take into account.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, if we look at it right now, what happens is that security operations teams come back and they'll run a scan and then give this report back to their operations team and say, hey, these are all of the vulnerable software packages, do something about it. And these scans are starting to try and put prioritization software in it. But in the end, they're still just saying to the operations team, hey, here's problems, fix them.
Yeah.
And at first glance, I looked at this and I thought, well, Salt can update packages. Why don't we just have Salt automatically update packages? I mean, and Salt has all the ability to scan existing packages and package versions and compare them to a CVE database. Why don't we do that? But I began to realize that, wow, that is a very powerful tool, because then, we could have, hey, this is vulnerable, and if you push this button, you update it. But then an operator needs more data. And I feel like this is really where things are breaking down, is that a security team says, these security products have given me the information I need to fulfill my job, but they don't give the operator what they need to fix those systems.
Yeah.
And so that's been a lot of what I've been thinking about, is how do we give the security team what they need to complete their job, but also in the same dashboard, through the same means, give the operations team what they need to solve it.
So what do you think those things are the operator needs
Well,
that they don't have right now?
when we look at a vulnerability, we really want to have as few vulnerabilities on our systems as possible. But we need to know what impact they have to our usage. And so what I want to do is deliver a tool that is able to show what your real impact is, again, based on your usage of the software.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at this and saying, hey, this particular package is associated with this CVE, and we know that this CVE has an exploit in the wild, I think that data is valuable. I think it's more valuable if we say, this particular package is currently listening on an external port, and we know that this vulnerability, it maps to these types of usages of this software. So we can say, okay, this vulnerability says it's a remote attack vector and we're listening on a port. Let's line that up for the user. What if this vulnerability happens every time you run a binary inside, a specific binary in this package? Is it possible for us to line that up and say, yes, you're running these binaries? Or is it possible to say, this particular package has a vulnerability, but how many services are using it? I mean, you mentioned OpenSSL. OpenSSL is used a lot.
Mhm.
And we may look at a Linux system and say OpenSSL is out of date, but how many services are actually being impacted?
Your own custom applications. Your developers might freak out if suddenly they have a new version of OpenSSL that is compatible with how they're using it at the moment. And there could be a lot of follow-on problems that occur.
And this happens. Now, I mean, the upshot with that problem is that the goal of the operating system vendors that are sending out these vulnerability fixes inside their packages is that those fixes don't impact the usage of the software, which helps a great deal, but you still need to be careful. And you still need to make sure that you restart your application. If you update OpenSSL, but don't restart your web server, it doesn't do you any good, right? You loaded a historic shared library into memory, not the now updated shared library.
Yeah.
And so it becomes really important to be able to say that what are all of the services that are running relative to this? And that's a challenge.
Yeah. Interesting. So what's the final result you want to present to these operators?
Well, the goal that I have, and I should say, I mean, at this point, we're still developing this. The goal that I have, again, is that we need to be able to, of course, show that scan.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be able to present that these are the packages that have vulnerabilities. But we also need to present that button that says, push this button and we'll update those packages. But more importantly, on top of that, we need to be able to show the operators and the security teams, how is this software being used? And so what I've honestly personally been working on recently is building the systems that allow us to get that visibility. Salt that already has a significant amount of information, right?
Yeah.
And functionality to be able to grab this, which has made it significantly easier to build. But there are still a few places where we need to spend more time auditing that system to get a really good understanding of how is this software being used. And then it becomes a question of how do we map that data back up to a user? How do we bring it back to a user and say, not only is software XYZ being used on these systems, but these are the vulnerabilities that map to how it's being used. These are the vulnerabilities that map to an application that is running with a service that in and of itself doesn't have a vulnerability, but its dependent libraries have vulnerabilities. Mm-hmm. This is a challenge. And I've made some pretty good progress on some of this usability mapping. We've still got a little ways to go before we get our vulnerability management software out. And so that's definitely something to be looking forward to. And we've got quite a few customers that are very excited to see it come through the pipe.
Yeah, well, when I talk to customers almost every day, and vulnerability management is something they bring up, ask about frequently. So a lot of people have been looking forward to that.
And it's a big deal.
It takes a lot of their time. So it's something that, one thing that people bring up over and over is that this type of vulnerability management takes them away from what they consider their real job. And so they spend sometimes days and days, weeks and weeks taking care of these things every month. And, Salt can help speed that up, make it more accurate, and be more exhaustive in across your infrastructure.
Right. And when we look historically, the Equifax breach, for instance, that was because the software package wasn't updated. And when they investigated why their systems weren't taken care of, the response was, it's nearly impossible for us to keep these things up to date. We have to facilitate the operations team with the automation that they need to get their job done. But we also need to tie that information back with the security team. We need to build a platform that facilitates communication between the teams.
Right.
We can't just preach communication. We have to build the means of
Right.
communication.
I'm already seeing that with SaltStack SecOps. So with looking for compliance with CIS standards and that type of thing, the security team and the operations team can look at the same reports and find the resolution to those problems quickly and the fixes quickly and at scale. So they don't have to have operations people going out, logging in servers, writing bash scripts. Salt helps them take care of that in a fast way across the entire infrastructure. And this vulnerability management will also help in that same way. So
Yep.
it's really
I'm really
exciting.
excited about it. We've got a little bit of work left to do, but we're getting close. All right. Thanks for coming on with me, Dave, and
My pleasure.
helping us explain vulnerability management and some of the things that we think can help us actually achieve a more secure posture in the world as we continue to try and solve many of those problems that we run into in securing infrastructure. Thanks, and thanks for watching.